Now for what's tipping the scales in the Synagogue Leader murder trial happening in Michigan. A jury debating the fate of defendant Michael Jackson-Bolanos for days, telling the judge last Friday that they were deadlocked on their decision. Well, then after a few more days of deliberations, they finally reached a partial verdict.
In the case, the people of the state of Michigan versus Michael Jackson-Bolanos, Mr. Foreperson, will you please read the verdict form as marked as to count 1, first-degree felony murder?
Deadlocked.
As to count 2, first-degree premeditated murder?
Not guilty.
As to count 3, home invasion first degree?
Deadlocked.
And as to count 4, concealing facts or misleading the police?
Guilty.
Okay, so here's what we've got. We've got the partial verdict there, guilty of concealing facts, misleading police. The jury hung on felony murder, hung on the home invasion, and found him not guilty of premeditated murder. Now, the victim is Samantha Woll. She was stabbed to death. And so now the state has the option of retrying Mr. Jackson-Bolanos on those 2 charges if they so decide to do that. Will they? Has anything throughout this trial tipped the scales? Let's talk about this. I want to bring in very special guest, Michael Jackson-Bolanos' attorney, Brian Brown. He was on earlier this week with us when the jury was out, and we're so glad to see him again. Brian, good morning to you. You have to be very encouraged after this verdict, I would imagine. Many lawyers see this as a big win for you.
Good morning. Yeah, it's a victory. It's not quite the victory that I was anticipating at the conclusion of the trial. I was hoping for a not guilty on the home invasion first degree and also the home invasion felony murder, but we have to take our victories where we can.
Sure. What do you think the state will do, Brian? Do you think they're going to retry your client on these charges?
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. A part of me says no, based upon their lack of evidence in this particular case, as well as other evidence that came forth that would, in my opinion, incriminate another individual and exonerate my client. But also the high publicity nature of this case may play an impact on whether or not the state decides to move forward charging them again.
I appreciate it, Brian. Let's play a clip of your client. He took the stand for anyone who might have missed it. We jumped into this trial late because of other obligations that we had, but he took the stand and he's explaining in this clip here we're about to play that he did not kill Samantha Woll, nor did he go inside of her apartment. Let's watch.
When you were confronted with evidence during your interview, you admitted to the truth, correct? You eventually admitted to the truth.
Correct.
Okay. And you would agree, would you agree that there was a lot of evidence that was testified to or shown in this particular trial, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And despite the insinuations from the prosecutor, well, I'm asking you a question. Did you kill Samantha Woll?
No, okay. I did not.
Did you go inside of her apartment?
I did not.
Okay.
Brian, of course, hindsight's 20/20, right? And we know that the decision to testify belongs always to the defendant. So your client alone, making that decision. Looking back after hearing the partial verdict now, do you think the decision to testify was helpful?
I think it was. I think my client came out as honest and truthful. And I believe that without his testimony, it's certain questions that the jury would have had that would not have been answered. And had he not testified, it very well may have been a guilty on all charges and not have been a deadlock.
Appreciate it, Brian. Let's take a look at some of his cross-examination. And we know that the one thing the jury did find him guilty of was not being truthful with police, concealing some facts. And here, this is a little portion of the cross where he's explaining that he didn't lie about his knowledge of the homicide because he's saying he didn't commit a homicide.
That wasn't a lie. I don't know nothing about homicides. I didn't know nothing of what happened to that woman.
Well, you testified that you saw a woman outside and that you touched her body, right?
That's true.
So when the police asked you, did you see anyone out there, and you said, I didn't see anyone, that was a lie, right?
That was a lie for the purpose he stated that I went into her house. So that made me tell him, no, I did not go in nobody's house. I did not kill Mrs. Woll. I did not do none of that.
Okay, and so, Brian, walk us through, how this gets a little muddy, for him in these facts, because he's in the vicinity and he's doing burglaries, right? Kind of walk us through what occurred with your client, please.
Well, he was in the vicinity of her apartment. He had admitted to police earlier that he was checking car handles to see if the doors were open on certain cars. If the doors were open on certain cars, he went inside the cars. He was very honest when he testified, and he also told police that the cars were not open, then he would just move on to the next car. So he was in various different apartment complexes. At some point in time, he came across Samantha Woll's apartment complex, and he was doing the same thing that he had been doing earlier, avoiding individuals. If he saw individuals out there, security, people walking, he would run away, walk in the opposite direction. So he was very consistent with his behavior as far as avoiding confrontation. At some point in time, he came across Samantha Woll's apartment complex. There was security there. He already previously had stashed a book bag in that particular area where Samantha Woll was generally located at. And he was going back to retrieve that book bag and came across her body. And then he checked her body for vital signs, bent over and touched her, checked her pulse, and that's where the blood was transferred from her to the back of his sleeve.
And we talked about this earlier in the week. For anybody who missed it, you were talking about how the amount of blood was very limited, and on the knife he had in his possession, there was no blood belonging to Samantha Woll on the knife. So I would imagine that was something that the jury had to have struggled with here. When he's being accused of stabbing her and the weapon in his possession contains none of her blood. What else do you think the jury might have been struggling with here, Brian?
I believe they were struggling with, or some were struggling with, the lack of investigation for the ex-boyfriend. As far as the police not doing a very thorough investigation of vetting to see whether or not he had any culpability in this, more or less just relying on the fact that his cell phone wasn't there, even though he made a statement that he's trying to outsmart people. And I believe that, a vast amount of individuals know if they're going to commit a murder to leave their cell phone at home because, cell phones can be tracked. That's kind of common knowledge nowadays. And I believe also just the lack of, for some individuals, being able to place Mr. Jackson-Bolanos in the house because he never went there, and just that time frame, that short window that they're claiming that this crime happened at. But then on the flip side, somebody was murdered. Samantha Woll was murdered. And I believe some people wanted to hold somebody accountable for it. And the fact that he was the only individual on trial at that particular time, they may have been dealing with some type of conflictions within themselves of what decision to make.
And as you're talking, Brian, this is really helpful because it provides context for the investigation, the temperament in the public at the time. I remember reading the headlines, and initially so many people thought, oh my gosh, this has to be a hate crime. We have this woman who's the leader of this synagogue, and she's murdered, and how brutal this was. Everyone initially, hate crime, and then we find out, no, not at all. And the boyfriend confesses. That's one of the most troubling things to me. He confesses and then retracts it. So I think that's a very valid point you're making about whether this investigation was thorough enough to eliminate him. If you're not going to charge him, then the jury needs to have a very clear understanding, a pristine understanding as to why not. Why not, if somebody says they did a homicide and perhaps may have motivation depending on how their relationship ended. For Mr. Jackson-Bolanos, you know, I'm curious what his life was like other than this. What more can you tell us, Brian, you know, about him? Because we know him as a defendant here, but you've gotten to know him more so personally.
Yes, well, he was currently employed previously to this particular incident. He had goals. He was a manager for some local music talent in the area, and he just had, you know, goals as far as just progressing in life. And you know, he was you know, despite his past and despite, you know, what he was doing that particular day, he actually, you know, had a genuine heart as far as, you know, caring about people, and I think that's played a role as far as when he saw Samantha Woll on the ground, he went to check her out. He's not a, you know, an evil person, even though he made bad decisions, but, you know, he has a genuine heart. I can say that.
Brian, it's been so great talking with you. Thank you kindly for making time for us. And please keep us apprised as you learn of what's going on with your client and whether the state's going to amend any charges or continue the pursuit with the charges as they are. Attorney Brian Brown, take good care. Have a wonderful weekend.